But at the same time, I remember watching a football game. There was a fight breaking out on the field, and the camera pans away. And so I went through the season of why am I not kind of living my own journey or creating my own narrative or living through the things that I really believe in when I have all of this media telling me what I should believe in, telling me what they believe to be true, whatever is in line with their agenda. And then when that game happened, it's the very first time I started thinking to myself, why can't I control how I want to watch what I'm watching? Because you can watch anything when you want, wherever you want, on whatever device you want.
Right.
The one thing you can't do is watch things how you want, because the video player is pretty much still the same to this day. You know, up until we came along, you couldn't interact with the video interface.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of McKinney Momentum. My name is Luke Gajari. I'm the marketing manager here at the McKinney Economic Development Corporation, and we provide this podcast to really inform you, to provide interviews, to give context to what's happening here in McKinney from an economic development standpoint. And today's interview, we're kind of wrapping up the past series we've been doing focused on the Innovation Fund. We've had some Innovation Fund company founders. We've had Greg Head, who is involved in the startup community in DFW in a very big way. And this last interview is a part of this series. There'll be more to come on the Innovation Fund, but for now, we're going to move into some other types of content. So to wrap things up, we have Denny Darmo. Denny founded a company called Snipitz, and he'll provide a much better overview than I will right now, but basically they take video content and give you multiple video experiences within one event. So if you're watching a golf tournament, you can see the same footage in different ways or different players featured on the bottom of your web player. A lot of different stuff. Like I said, I'm going to butcher it. He'll explain it really well. Our Senior Vice President, Michael Talley, interviews him today. And I encourage you, if you like what you see, check out Snipitz online and follow Denny Darmo on LinkedIn. Enjoy the interview.
Go ahead, Denny. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from.
Sure. Denny Darmo, founder and CEO of Snipitz. As far as who I am, I mean, I think I'm still asking myself that same question. My journey has been quite unique, being that I'm a child of immigrants. So, we didn't have much growing up. They came here with $50 in their pocket. And that's what I saw. I saw two parents who are hardly ever around, kicking the can down the road, really just trying to make ends meet. And I had to pave my own way. I remember all the kids in the neighborhood had a bike, and I was 8 years old. So I figured out I'm going to buy and sell candy. And that's how I saved up for my first BMX bike, which was a Diamondback.
Nice.
With Chromag wheels, mushroom grips, uniseat.
Like it was yesterday.
Like it was yesterday. And I cleaned that thing constantly because, I learned the value of what it took to get there. And so, if someone asked me, who am I wasn't the person who decided one day to get out of corporate life and just wanted to try my luck out at entrepreneurship. I think I came out of the womb that way, so to speak, because, I'm all about creating my own opportunity and circumstances in life, and that's what I tell my team.
So did you grow up buying and selling, or besides that, or
yeah, I mean,
keep going?
So I piggybacked off my mom, who was doing flea markets at the time, and I set up a candy table next to her. And when I made my first big purchase with the bike, I saved up enough money to buy a press for $1,200. This is 1978. So
what age were you at this time?
I was 8 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And so, this press that I bought was able to print people's names on pencils. And, at 8 years old, I'm thinking this is awesome because I started in the fall, but I quickly learned what the term seasonality meant because in the spring, nothing was happening. And so Christmas was hot right before school, and the beginning of school season was hot. But that business didn't do well, after Christmas and through the spring. And, at 8 years old, you're trying to sort this stuff out. But yeah, I've been scrapping it through life. I don't even know if I know what it feels like to get a W-2 check, because I've basically just created my own opportunities pretty much my entire life.
Okay. So tell me about yourself in a sense of, did education put you to, we'll get to the Snipitz story, but did it push you towards that, or is it more of just, trial by fire? Or?
I didn't want to go to school. But my sister was pretending to go to college. She did this for 2 years. She pretended to go to school. And, one of my parents' dream in immigrating here was to have one of their kids go to, a U.S. university. So I felt like I had to go to schools. I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I just happened to open up the paper one day, Newsday, and it happened to have a list of the top 10 jobs that were supposedly, going to be in demand. And number 1, 2, and 3 on the list were, computer science, information systems. It was wrapped around computing. So that's what I was like, well, I mean, gosh, these kids are making $60,000 out of college writing code. I think I'll do that. And so I went to Rochester Institute of Technology for Computer Science in 1988. And that's how I picked my major. It was literally born out of guilt and out of a newspaper.
Well, I mean, that can, nowadays a lot of kids are told, just go with your passions, and they don't always look at what's going to be around in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years too. So that's not necessarily a bad thing that you did that.
It's different too, because things are moving so quickly today.
Right.
And I've actually experienced that because I have kids of that age that have had to make those decisions in terms of what am I going to do with my life and go to school. And so, I've experienced that now from the other side.
Right. So tell us about Snipitz. How did that get started? How did the idea come about?
2019, I mean, I'm not going to get into politics, but if you do remember in 2019, there were a lot of scripted narratives back then, still going on now. But you have the conservative side, and I'm going to be aggressive with this because I have, very passionate about it in a sense of I remember what it felt like at the time. But they were jamming their thoughts and beliefs down people's throats through their news channels and mediums, but the liberal side was doing the same thing. We were also as a country trying to kick our president out of office. And I really started to understand like what narratives were about. And somewhere in the middle is your truth and your reality, right? What you believe, what you see through your lenses. But at the same time, I remember watching a football game. There was a fight breaking out on the field, and the camera pans away. And so I went through the season of why am I not kind of living my own journey or creating my own narrative or living through the things that I really believe in when I have all of this media telling me what I should believe in, telling me what they believe to be true, whatever is in line with their agenda. And then when that game happened, it's the very first time I started thinking to myself, why can't I control how I want to watch what I'm watching? Because you can watch anything when you want, wherever you want, on whatever device you want.
Right.
The one thing you can't do is watch things how you want because the video player is pretty much still the same to this day. Up until we came along, you couldn't interact with the video interface.
So I know we've talked a little bit offline before, and been a long time subscriber to MLB TV. I know I brought that up with you before. Way before I thought that was, I don't think any other the larger leagues were really doing that at the time. But go a little more in depth as far as what you guys are doing at Snipitz and what the competitors aren't doing or what they're not doing now when you're viewing an event.
Sure. Well, we have what I would describe to be an integration tool. It's actually a solution. I don't necessarily reference it as a video player because it's more than that. We have learned through social media a lot of things, but it's social media that has invested a lot of money and have gotten very, very good at trying to understand who we are as consumers. And so your feeds on your TikTok and Facebook and Instagram are much different than my feeds because it knows you. Sure. Video players don't have that level of data collection, and it can't, because if you're pushing out a linear stream, you're really subject to ingest or watch whatever you're watching the way it's been prescribed for you, or everyone for that matter. And so what we're starting to see now is because our relationship with media has changed, people want to interact with their content. And Deloitte just put out a report. They put out a report, and it's so detailed. It shows what people of all ages actually want to do, and it's interaction. They want to have a say.
Right.
So, to answer your question directly, we're starting to see the big leagues and sports properties, contemplate, well, how are we going to deliver our intellectual property? How are we going to deliver our narrative in a way that's never been done before? Really, just to not just retain their fans and keep their product sticky, but how do we engage them in a way where it attracts new ones?
What do you think has been? Do you think it's just not been brought up before, or they've just never looked at it that way, or really had those open conversations? Why have they not looked at it?
Well,
go
they
in that
haven't.
direction?
They haven't had to. So, for instance, if you and I owned a sports team, all we ever did historically was sell our rights to be broadcasted by an ESPN, Disney, or CBS, or whoever. And so we were only, as a sports property, really consumed with two things. We needed to get as many butts into that seat as humanly possible into the stadium. The second thing we really needed to do was win. But the idea of understanding who our actual fan is, that was kind of the distributor's job, right? They understood the demographic. It was part of their model that said, well, if we're going to buy this MLB's Thursday night game for $10 million, we need to know that we're going to make $10 million plus X and have it covered, structure our rate card appropriately so that, we can sell the advertising and the sponsorship. So the production of that really was never contemplated. And so what's changed? Technology. Now we're seeing teams going direct to consumer. Through what? Through their apps, through OTT platforms that they're developing, through their own websites. And, the MLB is doing
just
it.
more control from the team and league perspective?
I have a personal opinion on this, and it's not widely spoke about, but I don't think I'm wrong. Imagine this. Imagine me trying to tell your story. Imagine you trying to tell my story.
Right.
Only you can tell your story the way you know your story because it's you. So it was always like a big question mark in my mind. It's amazing how rich and big some of these franchises and teams are, and they're putting their narrative and their story literally every single week into someone else's hands. And now that we have that direct consumer play, and the MLB is doing that, right? They're literally bifurcating their own market, and they're getting rid of their RSNs, their regional providers, and they're going direct to consumer, which means that now they're producing their own content, which they've never had to do before. So yeah, technology has enabled all that.
So let me transition a little bit here. How did you end up in McKinney? Why McKinney?
I don't believe in accidents. I don't believe in those sort of things. I believe that things happen in life is for a very specific reason and purpose. Not that I was actively looking, but always having good strategic partners, very important, whether they're financial, whether they're integration partners, vendors, whatever the case is. The amount of effort that McKinney now is making, in terms of growing its ecosystem, supporting local entrepreneurs and businesses, it was refreshing, and it was something that, I was very much attracted to. The people here made a huge difference, the level of interest they had in what we were building, and to have that support that says, hey, we can provide space, we can provide resources, our offices are always open, we can help you grow when you get to that point and help subsidize in some way, that process really appealed to me.
Well, I mean, I was going to ask you about what the benefits were to you, and specifically with Snipitz, but you kind of touched on that a little bit. But one thing we also like to do with the Innovation Fund, most of our companies start out with Growth Fund, but I like to say this: we don't just pat you on the back and hope you make it. Here's your money and on your way. There's opportunities that we work with these companies to continue to build our resources, to provide those resources to the companies to succeed, and even there's eligibility to graduate into other levels of incentives where companies can start out that $50,000 growth fund and then graduate into potentially upwards of $500,000 in what we call an expansion fund with the Innovation Fund. But going back to kind of Snipitz a little bit, what has been your biggest obstacle since you've started, maybe since you've been in McKinney, or both?
Resources, human resources, and that goes back to capital resources. and also the ability to have strategic partners that can facilitate introductions. So there's so much going on in our immediate area. I saw that as a huge benefit potentially to be able to be introduced to local teams. And it doesn't even mean tier one sports necessarily, but there's sports wrapped around this area all over the place. But also the connective tissue with groups like North Texas Angels and other opportunities to tell our story to people who might take vested interest and financial interest in what we're doing.
Can you list any of the wins for the company, or
Yeah,
that's not under NDA?
Well, we were able to secure a contract with the Legends of the LPGA. I happen to be a very big golf fan and followed it very closely, primarily because my kids played competitively. But just over the past couple of weeks, we've been solicited by the International Broadcast Corporation. Well, really, it's conference, the IBC. It's a huge event, like the NAB show in Vegas here in the States, and they've asked us to be part of their innovation track. To deliver, not just show the product, but to deliver information as to what that workflow looks like. How are we able to do close to no latency? We're talking 1/100th of a second, real-time video delivery, but in an interactive environment where we're building in gamification and statistics and stuff like that, literally in one interface. So the level of exposure that I think we're going to get in September is going to be extraordinary.
Do you do anything? I mean, I'm a huge sports fan, and I know we've talked a little offline of everything I follow in the MLB TV, but do you foresee, and you may be already doing this, with the sports betting growing and it becoming legalized in more states, I feel like every year, where do you see the future of Snipitz in that?
I totally see us in the mix. That's a very personal thing. It's a very personal endeavor when people are putting their money on the line and betting on things that are they're passionate about their favorite teams. But one of the things that has made it clunky in the past is, someone going in to place a bet. Oftentimes they're not just betting on one team, or if it is one team, it could be a player or points as it relates to that game. So there's multiple things to follow, and your typical profile of what that looks like is someone has watching something on their big screen, but they have their computer open at the same time, and they're also on their phone. So how could you consolidate all that into a much easier user interface and experience? Is absolutely through, a tool like Snipitz.
Well, and if you're not too familiar with sports betting, and probably not all of our viewers are, the latency discussion. If you can bet live with a football game, you can bet on if they're going to run or pass, play by play, you can bet. And so I'm sure that comes into play when you have those discussions on those sponsors, or maybe you build a platform altogether with someone. But maybe we don't get too in depth on that.
It's a huge issue. All I will say is I am under NDA as it relates to this one, but we are working with one of the world's largest broadcasters, and our feed came in 46 seconds faster than their feed did using legacy technology on one of their OTT platforms, and on their main platform, it came in 1 minute and 10 seconds faster. And so literally from tip to tail, from end to end, opposite ends of the earth, we were at just over 2 seconds behind the actual things happening on the ground. And they came in 46 and 1 minute, 10 seconds respectively. They were blown away.
So the proof is in running those, I guess, kind of studies, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we recorded all this. We did a side-by-side with a counter, and that's how we were able to assess how much of a delay, it actually was. And it's critically important to betting, even if it's peer-to-peer.
Right. So what's the future look like?
It's going to feel like a game, in my opinion. It is content rich. We think because of bandwidth improvements, you're going to see better resolutions, 4K, 8K. But it's not just going to be the broadcasted or produced feed. There's going to be a lot of integration of experiential technologies, and we think we're going to lead, in that, because the AI and machine learning that we're building is going to start to understand that your IP address does have a tendency to look at statistics, and so it may choose to rearrange how those feeds come up in that in that interface as it learns your behaviors, interests, and patterns. So there could be 1,000 people watching the same game, but the options in terms of what that player is pulling up could be 1,000 different ways based on how you use, and really create your own narrative for yourself. That's
Yeah.
what I think is. That's where I think it's going.
That's interesting. I want to transition again, talk about a little more personal things. Imagine the you of today met the you of 3 years ago. What are the top 3 things you've learned that you'd want to teach the you of the past?
I've really been digging into my faith lately, and I don't even know if I'm supposed to talk about this or not. But I've handed my business over. I mean, I've put it at the foot of the throne. I really have, and to be able to seek counsel not just in that manner, but to utilize your advisors and people who have either invested or have chosen to spend time with your company, to not try to go it alone. And it's okay to say that you don't know. It's okay to say that you don't have the answer, but maybe I'll find out. But to tap into those resources, that's one thing I'd say. And then, the other thing I tell myself is be patient. Hey, if you really believe that everything happens for a reason, then maybe it's not always going to be in your timing.
Right.
So be patient. That would be the other thing.
We say that a lot in our world because a lot of things we can't discuss openly with the public. And so sometimes things seem to happen overnight, which it could be years of work on a project. So we certainly understand that. What's the best advice you've ever received?
I've received, going back to that, don't believe in coincidences or accidents and the timing of things. I cannot possibly pinpoint it to one thing. There have been so many things that have been either expressed to me or shared with me, and it's what I needed to hear at that moment of time. But one thing that really resonates with me, because I'm kind of transitioning in my own life right now, is someone once told me when I was young and starting my career, I may have been in my early 20s. He said, for the first half of your life, you're going to look for success. But for the second half of your life, you will look for significance. And that's where I'm at now. Is going back to what I just said a little bit earlier, why I'm digging into my faith in ways that I haven't before. We don't take anything with us when we pass. So what are you going to leave behind? Is it going to be your reputation, what people remember about you, and your integrity, just the things, the track that you lay when you're a little older is much different than what you think it should be when you're in your 20s starting out in life, especially as a male.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Wow. Okay, rapid fire. Nothing too crazy on here.
Okay.
You only have 3 seconds to answer each one. No, you can take as much time as you'd like. But we got about 10 questions. We're going to start out with best meal you ever ate.
Oh, I was on a boat sailing the BVIs.
First job. I guess you kind of talked about that.
Yeah, I sold candy and then subsequently pencils.
So have you ever worked for anyone else? Have you ever?
I have. Out of college, I worked for a very, very short time for a Japanese conglomerate.
Okay.
But I was only there for, 3 or 4 months.
Right. Okay.
And realized, what am I doing?
You don't want to work for anyone else. You want to work 80 hours a week so you don't have to work 40.
I know, you got to be careful of what you wish for. Yeah.
Right. What time of the day are you most productive?
Between 4:30 in the morning and 7.
So you get up at 4:30?
4:30 to 5, yeah.
I feel like we see a trend here a little bit with these startups, these founders. Okay. Stuck on a desert island, maybe the British Virgin Islands.
Would be a bad place.
You can take 3 movies. What are they?
These are 3. So Tetris.
Okay. The new one?
The new one.
Okay.
Tetris, Air.
Great movie.
And also, the name escapes me, but it's about how the iPhone was actually created. And it's just, these aren't entertaining type movies necessarily. To me, it was just so much encouragement, people taking huge risks just to follow through and do the things that they believed in. But, and in Tetris's case, if you watch that movie, this guy risked his life to try to.
I've not seen that one yet, but I've heard.
It is, if you're an entrepreneur, Air is inspiring. You probably have seen that,
Yeah,
but
I've seen
Tetris is
that.
another one.
And Air, actually, I told our staff that everyone needed to watch it because it's kind of what we do.
Yeah.
We don't really take no for an answer, and kind of when Matt Damon's character, they said, don't call Michael Jordan's mother. He's like, okay, I'll just go to her house
Exactly.
and have a conversation with her. Right. Y'all didn't say I couldn't do that.
Yep.
So I certainly get that.
I remembered the third one. It's called General Magic.
Okay.
And I don't want to mention any names because I don't want to get myself in trouble, but there was a company and a guy who designed what we know as the iPhone today. Literally, he drew it. He drew it in the 70s.
Okay, wow. I'll have to check that one out.
Yep.
Not heard of that one. Okay, same question, but with books.
Well, I read a lot of publications and not necessarily books related to the industry. On Becoming a Leader by Warren Bennis is one, because you're asking books.
Mm-hmm.
Secrets of Sand Hill Road, another book. And then one book that had an impact on me when I was much younger was a requirement was actually Death of a Salesman.
Okay. I haven't heard of the first two. I've heard of the last. Bucket list travel destination.
Probably New Zealand.
Because any reason why?
I've never been there. The pictures look magnificent.
They do.
Yeah. So
I think actually, I was watching the Women's World Cup. I think the USA was playing there yesterday.
They
I believe.
definitely passing
Netherlands.
through there, but yeah, New Zealand.
Yeah. Okay. If you could spend an hour with anyone, living or dead, real or fictional, which makes it a little more interesting,
Yeah.
in my opinion, who would it be?
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think he's brilliant and he's fearless, in my opinion.
That's fearless, absolutely.
And right now I just feel like everybody, with the way the world is, everyone tries to be so politically correct and everything else, and he's just who he is. And he's also a visionary.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
Elon, for sure.
Okay, last one, most difficult one. If you weren't doing what you're doing now with Snipitz, what would you be doing?
I would be working for the Living Water full time, for sure. That's one of the ministries I support.
Okay.
I've been on 2 mission trips with them this calendar year, and that's where our hearts are as a family, and that's most likely, in fact, not most likely, that's exactly where I'd be full time, is working with the Living Water full time.
Okay. Really excited about what's happening with Snipitz. Happy to have you part of the Innovation Fund and the EDC, and really just excited to see what the next steps are for you personally and the company.
Yeah, we're looking, to continue to grow our relationship, but we think the next 6 to 12 months is going to be pivotal, not just for our organization, but just for media in general.
I hope you found that interview insightful, interesting, engaging. Denny is a great leader and brings a lot of unique qualities here with his company Snipitz, and we're excited to see what's to come next for them, and the growth that they're experiencing is just amazing to watch. So if you like Denny, if you like the company and want to be more involved, follow them on LinkedIn, find them online with Snipitz. And as always, we'd love for you to follow, subscribe to this audio podcast on your favorite channel or whatever network you listen on. And then you can always find us on YouTube. We post short content as well there. And there's other things coming up in addition to McKinney Momentum that you can find on our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and we're excited to see what happens next here in McKinney. Thanks for coming along.